It all started on a sunny Saturday afternoon at one of the city's most exclusive lounges. The sun painted golden streaks across the skyline, and the air buzzed with the anticipation of weekend celebrations. Maya James, a striking woman in her mid-30s, walked toward the entrance with a purpose in her stride. She was dressed impeccably, a fitted emerald green dress that shimmered in the sunlight, paired with sleek black heels. Her natural curls framed her face, and her jewelry, subtle yet elegant, added to her aura of sophistication. Maya wasn't just any guest. She had worked tirelessly for this moment, a celebration of her success, a personal victory over the challenges she had faced to get where she was. This wasn't a night for networking or business meetings. No, tonight was about reveling in her accomplishments. She had overcome countless obstacles, defied the odds, and carved out a name for herself in a world that often underestimated her. As she approached the entrance, the lounge stood tall and imposing, its golden doors gleaming under the setting sun. A red carpet stretched out before the entrance, lined with velvet ropes that separated the elite from everyone else. The sound of laughter and clinking glasses filtered through the entrance as if the evening had already begun. Maya paused at the doorway, taking in the scene. She felt a spark of excitement. She had earned this every moment of it. She stepped forward, her heels clicking confidently against the pavement. At the door stood a tall, thin man in a sleek black suit, clipboard in hand. His name tag read Andrew, though his demeanor suggested he cared little about personal introductions. His sharp eyes scanned Maya briefly, as if making a mental assessment of her worth. When she reached the velvet rope, Andrew stepped forward, blocking her path with a rigid arm. His expression was polite but distant, his tone clipped as he said, "Excuse me, ma'am. This area is reserved for VIPs only." Maya blinked, momentarily caught off guard. "I am a VIP," she replied, her tone steady as she reached into her clutch and pulled out the glossy invitation. It was embossed with gold lettering, clearly marked with her name and the words, "Exclusive access granted." Andrew glanced at the invitation, but only briefly. His lips curled into a smirk, a gesture so small yet so cutting that it sent a chill down Maya's spine. He didn't even take the invitation from her hand. Instead, he waved dismissively and said, "I'm sorry, but this section is reserved for our more exclusive guests." Maya's smile faltered, but she kept her composure. "I believe there's been a mistake," she said, holding the invitation a little higher, her voice calm but firm. Andrew didn't bother to meet her gaze. "I don't make mistakes, ma'am," he said, his voice laced with condescension. The words hung in the air like a slap. Maya felt the sting, not just of his tone but of the unspoken judgment behind it. It wasn't what he said, it was what he meant. It was in the way his eyes schemed over her, as if she didn't belong, as if she couldn't possibly be the kind of person this lounge catered to. Maya drew in a slow breath, steadying herself. She glanced around, noticing the other guests being ushered into the VIP section. They were mostly dressed in designer suits and gowns, their skin glowing under the soft lights of the entrance. None of them looked like her. And yet, Maya knew she belonged. She had the invitation. She had every right to be there. "Perhaps you should check again," she said, her tone now edged with quiet determination. Andrew sighed, as if humoring her was a great inconvenience. He tapped his clipboard, flipping through the pages in an exaggerated manner. After a few seconds, he looked up and said, "I don't see your name here." Maya's heart tightened, but she didn't let it show. She knew this wasn't about the list. Her name was on that invitation, clear as day. This wasn't an administrative error, it was a deliberate slight, a gatekeeper flexing his power in the pettiest way. For a moment, Maya considered pressing further, but the host's dismissive posture told her it would be futile. She realized then that this wasn't about her credentials or her invitation. It was about the assumptions he had made the moment she walked up to that rope. "Is there a problem?" came a voice from behind. Maya turned to see a middle-aged couple approaching the entrance. The man wore a tailored suit, and the woman was draped in diamonds. Andrew's demeanor shifted instantly. His smirk turned into a professional smile, his posture straightening as he stepped aside to let them pass. "Welcome, Mr. and Mrs. Whitaker," he said smoothly, opening the velvet rope for them. Maya watched as they entered without hesitation, no questions asked. She turned back to Andrew, her expression neutral, though her mind was racing. "Have a nice evening," Andrew said to her, his tone dripping with finality as he returned to his clipboard. Maya didn't respond. She stood there for a moment, the weight of the moment sinking in. It wasn't the first time she had faced this kind of treatment. But something about this particular instance felt sharper, more personal. She took a step back, her heels clicking against the pavement again, though this time the sound was softer, less confident. She felt the eyes of others on her, their curiosity mingled with judgment. But she didn't give them the satisfaction of seeing her crumble. Instead, she turned and walked away, her back straight, her chin held high. What they didn't know, what Andrew didn't know, was that Maya James wasn't the kind of woman who walked away from a challenge. As she reached her car, she paused, looking back at the glowing lights of the lounge. A fire burned in her chest, ignited not by the humiliation she had just endured but by the resolve it had awakened within her. Maya didn't know exactly what she was going to do next. But one thing was certain, this story wasn't over. Not by a long shot. As Maya sat in her car, gripping the steering wheel, she replayed the interaction in her mind. It wasn't just about being turned away, it was the silent accusations, the unspoken words that screamed louder than anything Andrew could have said. "You don't belong here." That's what his smirk had implied. That's what the laughter of the staff at her expense had confirmed. Maya stared through the windshield at the lounge's glowing facade. It was ironic how a place designed to exude luxury and sophistication could leave her feeling so small. But she wasn't small, not anymore. Those days were long behind her. Maya James hadn't always been the confident, successful woman who walked into that lounge. Her journey had been paved with struggles and setbacks, starting from her childhood in a modest neighborhood on the city's outskirts. Her parents had worked tirelessly to provide for their family. Her father was a construction worker who often came home with aching joints and tired eyes, while her mother juggled multiple jobs to make ends meet. They had instilled in Maya the values of hard work and resilience, teaching her that her worth wasn't defined by what others thought of her. But the world hadn't always been kind to Maya. In school, she was often overlooked, her teachers assuming she wouldn't amount to much simply because of where she came from. College had been a battlefield of proving herself academically, socially, and financially. When she landed her first job in finance, she'd faced another set of challenges. As a young black woman in a predominantly male industry, she'd been dismissed, underestimated, and sometimes outright ignored. But Maya had turned every slight, every rejection, into fuel. She had worked twice as hard, pushing herself beyond limits others couldn't imagine. And now, she was the CEO of her own investment firm, a leader in her field, and a woman who had earned her place at every table she sat at. Yet here she was, sitting in her car, feeling the sting of that old, familiar dismissal. It was a reminder that no matter how much she achieved, some people would always see her as less than. But Maya wasn't the kind of person to wallow in self-pity. If her life had taught her anything, it was that every setback was an opportunity in disguise. She took a deep breath, her grip on the steering wheel loosening. Her mind was already shifting gears, moving from hurt to action. They think I don't belong, she thought. Then I'll show them what belonging really looks like. Maya pulled out her phone, scrolling through her contacts until she found the number she was looking for. It belonged to Karen, a close friend and one of the city's top real estate brokers. The phone rang twice before Karen's cheerful voice answered. Maya. To what do I owe the pleasure? Maya didn't waste time on pleasantries. Karen, I need you to find out something for me. Who owns the Lux Lounge? Karen was silent for a moment, clearly caught off guard by the question. The Lux Lounge? That fancy place downtown. That's the one, Maya said. Why are you asking about it? Karen's tone was curious, but Maya could hear the hesitation behind her words. Let's just say I had an interesting experience there tonight, Maya replied, keeping her voice even. I want to know who's in charge. Can you help me with that? Karen didn't press further. I'll see what I can find out and get back to you. Are you okay? I'm fine, Maya said, though the fire in her voice betrayed her calm tone. Just get me the information. The next morning, Maya woke up with renewed determination. She spent the day at her office, handling her usual responsibilities, but her mind kept drifting back to the lounge. By lunchtime, Karen called back with the information Maya had requested. The Lux Lounge is owned by a small hospitality group, Karen explained. It's run by a man named David Langston. He's the majority shareholder and the one who makes most of the decisions. Do you have his contact information? Maya asked. Karen hesitated. Maya, what are you planning to do? Don't worry about that, Maya said with a sly smile. Just send me what you have. Within minutes, her phone buzzed with an email from Karen containing David Langston's contact details and additional information about the lounge's ownership structure. Maya wasted no time. Maya leaned back in her office chair, studying the information. Lux Lounge wasn't just a single establishment, it was part of a portfolio of high-end venues. However, recent reports suggested that Lux Lounge had been underperforming compared to the group's other properties. This might be easier than I thought, Maya muttered to herself. She picked up the phone and dialed the number listed for David Langston's office. After a few rings, a woman's voice answered. Langston Enterprises, how may I assist you? This is Maya James. I'd like to speak with Mr. Langston regarding a potential business opportunity. The assistant hesitated before replying. Mr. Langston is currently unavailable. May I take a message? Tell him I'm interested in discussing the Lux Lounge, Maya said firmly. I'll expect a call back soon. Her confidence left no room for argument. By the end of the day, her phone buzzed with an incoming call from David Langston himself. Ms. James, David's voice was smooth and businesslike. I hear you're interested in Lux Lounge. What can I do for you? I'm not just interested, Maya replied. I'm looking to buy. There was a pause on the other end of the line. Buy. The Lux Lounge isn't on the market. Everything is on the market at the right price, Maya said. David chuckled, though there was a note of intrigue in his voice. And what makes you so interested in this particular property? Maya leaned forward, her elbows resting on her desk. Let's just say I have a personal connection to the place. I think it has potential, but it's not living up to it right now. With the right leadership, it could be a jewel in your portfolio or mine. David was silent for a moment, considering her words. I'll admit, Lux Lounge has been a bit of a headache lately. But I'd need to see a serious offer before we talk further. You'll have it by the end of the week, Maya said confidently. True to her word, Maya put together an offer that David couldn't refuse. By the end of the week, the Lux Lounge was officially hers. But owning the lounge wasn't enough for Maya. She had big plans to transform it into a space where everyone felt welcome, a place where exclusivity didn't mean exclusion. And the first step? Cleaning house. Maya felt the familiar burn of humiliation creeping up her neck, spreading like wildfire. Her chest tightened, her pulse quickened, but she wasn't about to let it show. She had learned long ago how to keep her emotions in check, especially in situations like this. With a steadying breath, she turned away from the velvet ropes and the dismissive staff, masking the storm brewing inside her with a calm, composed exterior. Her heels clicked against the polished marble floor, each step measured and deliberate, as if she controlled every sound, every movement, despite the chaos in her mind. But her thoughts were racing, an uncontrollable whirlwind of anger, disbelief, and something deeper, determination. This wasn't the first time she'd been underestimated. It wasn't the first time someone had looked at her and decided she didn't belong. But this time, it stung differently. It wasn't just the dismissal, it was the way it was done. So casual. So confident. As if her presence wasn't just unwelcome but laughable. From the corner of her eye, Maya caught a glimpse of the staff gathered near the entrance. They weren't subtle. One young woman whispered something to the host, Andrew, her face barely hiding a smirk. Another waiter, holding a tray of empty champagne flutes, muttered under his breath, loud enough for Maya to hear as she passed. Some people just don't get it. Maya froze for the briefest moment, her hand tightening on the strap of her handbag. The words echoed in her ears, sharper than any insult hurled directly at her. She glanced back, and their eyes darted away, but the damage was done. Their whispered laughter followed her, each giggle a needle prick to her pride. For a second, the urge to turn around and confront them surged through her veins. To show them exactly who they were dealing with. But Maya had learned long ago that certain battles couldn't be won with words alone. Instead, she straightened her posture, adjusted her coat, and continued toward the exit, her heels resuming their rhythmic click against the floor. To anyone watching, she looked calm, composed, even indifferent. But inside, a fire had ignited, a fire that wasn't going out anytime soon. As she pushed open the heavy glass doors of the lounge, the cool evening air hit her face, grounding her in the moment. The city lights sparkled around her, their brilliance a stark contrast to the dim feelings swirling in her chest. She stood on the sidewalk for a moment, taking it all in: the bustling cars, the chatter of pedestrians, the faint hum of music spilling from the lounge behind her. What they didn't know, what Andrew and his staff couldn't possibly have imagined, was that Maya wasn't walking away in defeat. She was walking towards something bigger. Her mind began to clear, the initial sting of humiliation giving way to something far more powerful, resolve. She didn't just want to prove them wrong. She wanted to do it in a way they'd never forget. Maya's thoughts drifted back to the countless times she'd faced situations like this before. As a child, she'd been the one told to wait outside when her friends were allowed in. In college, she was the girl everyone assumed was there on a scholarship, not because of her intelligence but because they couldn't fathom any other explanation. In her career, it had been no different. Boardrooms filled with skeptical gazes, networking events where she was overlooked until she spoke up and shattered their low expectations. Each experience had left its mark, shaping her into the woman she was today, a woman who refused to be defined by anyone else's standards. But tonight wasn't just another notch on that long list. It was a reminder that no matter how far she'd come, there were still doors closed to her, not because she lacked the key, but because the gatekeepers refused to let her in. As she walked toward her car, parked a few blocks away, Maya began to imagine possibilities. The Lux Lounge had made it clear she wasn't welcome. Fine. But what if she could turn the tables? What if she could take their symbol of exclusivity and turn it into something entirely different, something that truly represented what she stood for? By the time she reached her car, her humiliation had transformed into inspiration. She leaned against the driver's door, staring up at the night sky. The stars twinkled faintly above the city's glow, their persistence a quiet reminder of resilience. Maya pulled out her phone and opened her notes app. She began typing furiously, ideas pouring out of her like water from a broken dam. Redefine luxury. Inclusivity doesn't mean mediocrity. Empowerment in every detail. No more velvet ropes, everyone deserves the best. Her fingers paused, hovering over the screen. She smiled faintly, imagining the look on Andrew's face if he could see what she was planning. The next morning, Maya woke early, her mind buzzing with ideas. She had always been a planner, someone who thrived on turning dreams into actionable steps. But this wasn't just a business move, it was personal. At her office, she called an emergency meeting with her core team. As the CEO of a successful investment firm, Maya had access to resources and connections that could make her vision a reality. "We're looking into acquiring Lux Lounge," she announced to her team. There were murmurs of surprise, but no one questioned her decision. They knew Maya's instincts were rarely wrong. "Why Lux Lounge?" one of her senior advisors asked, curiosity rather than skepticism in his tone. "Because it's broken," Maya replied simply. "And we're going to fix it?" Maya's team moved quickly, gathering every piece of information they could find about Lux Lounge and its parent company. By noon, Maya had a detailed report in front of her, outlining the lounge's financial performance, customer reviews, and ownership structure. As she read through the document, one detail stood out: Lux Lounge had been struggling in recent years. Despite its air of exclusivity, it had failed to attract the kind of consistent clientele that its competitors enjoyed. "They've been leaning on image alone," Maya muttered, a sly smile creeping onto her face. "But image only gets you so far." By the end of the week, Maya had everything she needed to make her move. She had contacted David Langston, the lounge's majority owner, and scheduled a meeting to discuss her interest in the property. Her team had been skeptical at first. "Do you really think he'll sell?" one of them asked. "He will," Maya said confidently. "Because I'm not giving him a choice." As Maya prepared for her meeting, she envisioned what Lux Lounge could become under her leadership. It wouldn't just be a place for the elite, it would be a space where people from all walks of life could feel like VIPs. The luxury would remain, but the exclusivity would take on a new meaning, a commitment to treating everyone with dignity and respect. Maya knew it wouldn't be easy. Transforming a brand, especially one so steeped in outdated ideals, would take time and effort. But she was ready. Because Maya James wasn't just walking towards something bigger, she was about to create it. Maya's determination wasn't just a spark, it was a raging fire. Over the next few days, she dedicated herself to a mission that combined her strategic brilliance with an emotional drive she hadn't felt in years. Lux Lounge wasn't just a target for acquisition, it was a symbol, a way to reclaim her dignity while redefining the idea of exclusivity itself. Her first move was clear: research and preparation. Maya knew that any successful negotiation required not just money but knowledge. She dove into every detail of Lux Lounge's operation, reviewing financial statements, customer feedback, and even social media chatter. It didn't take long to identify the cracks in their seemingly perfect facade. While the lounge marketed itself as an exclusive destination for the city's elite, reviews painted a different picture. Customers complained about poor service, unprofessional staff, and an overall atmosphere of arrogance. Lux Lounge wasn't thriving, it was surviving, and just barely. "This isn't a fortress," Maya said to herself, reviewing the reports late one night. "It's a house of cards. And I'm about to pull the right one." With her research complete, Maya scheduled a meeting with David Langston, the majority owner of Lux Lounge. She knew he was a businessman first and foremost, and if she could appeal to his bottom line, he'd be open to selling. The meeting took place in Langston's sleek downtown office, with floor-to-ceiling windows that overlooked the city skyline. David Langston was every bit the image of corporate success, sharply dressed, exuding confidence, and slightly smug. But Maya was no stranger to men like him. She'd dealt with their kind her entire career. "Ms. James," Langston said, extending a hand as she entered the room. "It's a pleasure to meet you. I've heard impressive things about your firm." "The pleasure's mine," Maya replied, shaking his hand firmly. "I've also heard quite a bit about Lux Lounge." Langston raised an eyebrow, intrigued. "Oh? And what's your impression?" Maya smiled, her expression carefully neutral. I think it has potential. But I also think it's been underperforming. Langston's smugness faltered for a moment, replaced by curiosity. Underperforming? That's a bold statement. It's an honest one, Maya said. I've reviewed your financials, customer feedback, and market positioning. Lux Lounge isn't living up to its brand promise. But I believe it can under the right leadership. Langston leaned back in his chair, studying her. And you think you're that leader? I don't think, Maya said confidently. I know. And I'm willing to put my money where my mouth is. The negotiation was intense but professional. Langston, though reluctant at first, couldn't deny the truth in Maya's words. Lux Lounge had been struggling for years, and despite his efforts, it was clear the business needed a new direction. Maya's offer was generous but firm, reflecting both the lounge's current value and its untapped potential. By the end of the meeting, Langston agreed to sell, though not without a parting comment. You're ambitious, Ms. James, he said as they shook hands. I'll admit, I'm curious to see what you'll do with the place. Watch closely, Maya replied with a small smile. You might learn something. With Lux Lounge officially under her ownership, Maya wasted no time. She knew that transforming the lounge wouldn't just be about changing the decor or tweaking the menu, it was about redefining the culture, from the ground up. Her first order of business? A complete overhaul of the staff. Maya scheduled a meeting with the entire team, from the managers to the wait staff. She stood at the front of the lounge's main room, her presence commanding attention. The very same staff who had dismissed her as unworthy just days ago now looked at her with a mix of confusion and apprehension. I'm Maya James, she began, her voice steady and clear. As of today, I'm the new owner of Lux Lounge. There were murmurs throughout the room, some surprised, others uneasy. Andrew, the host who had turned her away, stood at the back, his face pale. I'll be honest with you, Maya continued. This lounge has lost its way. It's become a place where people feel excluded, judged, and undervalued. That ends now. Her gaze swept across the room, landing briefly on Andrew, whose eyes darted to the floor. I'm implementing new policies, new standards, and a new vision, Maya said. If you're willing to embrace these changes, you're welcome to stay and be part of something better. If not, I understand, but there's no place for old attitudes here. Over the next few weeks, Maya worked tirelessly to transform Lux Lounge into a space that embodied her vision. She hired a diverse team of professionals who shared her commitment to creating an inclusive, welcoming atmosphere. The interior of the lounge was revamped, replacing its cold, elitist design with warm, sophisticated touches that invited rather than intimidated. The velvet ropes were removed, and the new tagline "Luxury for All" was prominently displayed. Maya also introduced new policies to ensure every guest felt valued. Staff underwent extensive training in customer service, with an emphasis on respect and professionalism. Word began to spread about the changes at Lux Lounge. The same social media platforms that had once criticized the lounge were now buzzing with praise for its transformation. The grand reopening of Lux Lounge was a night to remember. The lounge was packed, not just with the city's elite but with people from all walks of life. Maya stood near the entrance, greeting guests with a warm smile, her presence setting the tone for the evening. Andrew, the former host, was noticeably absent. Maya had let him go during her initial staff review, along with several others who hadn't embraced the new vision. As the night went on, Maya watched the crowd with a sense of pride and satisfaction. Lux Lounge wasn't just a business, it was a statement, a reminder that true luxury wasn't about exclusion but inclusion. Toward the end of the evening, Maya found herself standing near the bar, a glass of sparkling water in hand. A woman approached her, her expression a mix of gratitude and admiration. "Excuse me," the woman said softly. "I just wanted to thank you. This place, it's different now. It feels like somewhere I belong." Maya smiled, her heart swelling with pride. "That's exactly what I hoped for." As the woman walked away, Maya glanced around the lounge once more. The laughter, the conversations, the smiles, it was everything she had envisioned. And in that moment, she realized something important: the humiliation she had felt that night wasn't a setback. It was the catalyst for something far greater than she could have imagined. Sometimes, being underestimated was the greatest advantage of all. The days following Maya's decision were anything but ordinary. She moved with the precision of a chess master, making calculated moves that no one saw coming. To the world, she was just another businesswoman going about her day, but behind the scenes, she was orchestrating a transformation that would leave everyone stunned. Sitting in her penthouse office, which overlooked the sprawling city skyline, Maya was in her element. The hum of her team working in the background was a comforting reminder of the empire she had built from the ground up. She had power, not just the kind you could see, but the kind that moved silently.